Everybody's got a balance, but no one knows how much. There's no way to run the numbers, no way to count it up. And we're pouring out our fortunes in the moments, both the big and the small. Yeah, we gotta spend it all. All I have is what you gave, watching seconds turn to days. I was made for more than just to watch it fly. A few more turns around the sun, could be hundreds, could be one. Show me how to spend the treasure of my time. Show me how to spend a life. Yeah. Show me how to spend a life. I have never seen a tombstone say I didn't work enough. Nah. Nobody ever heard a father say I held my kids too much. God, I wanna run after what really matters, so remind me when I fall how a good man spends it all. All I have is what you gave, watching seconds turn to days. I was made for more than just to watch it fly. A few more turns around the sun, could be hundreds, could be one. Show me how to spend the treasure of my time. Show me how to spend a life. Yeah. Show me how to spend a life. Don't let me waste it. Don't let me lose it. Don't let me steal it for myself. No, no. I know it's precious. I know it's priceless. I know my time is flying by. Show me how to spend a life. Show me how to spend a life. Cause all I have is what you gave, watching seconds turn to days. I was made for more than just to watch it fly. A few more turns around the sun, could be hundreds, could be one. Show me how to spend the treasure of my time. Show me how to spend a life. 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 I was blinded, you gave me eyes to see. I was going under, you reached out to me. No, there's nothing you won't do to pick me up and pull me through. Every hour, 8 days a week, yeah. Your love is like a fountain, it'll never run dry, it'll never run dry. Your love is moving mountains every day of my life, every day of my life. Can I get a witness?
Alrighty, we are about to get this Kim Fest started. All things Kim Skattum are going to be happening here in the multi-purpose room in just a couple minutes. And so if you're not in here yet, you better get in here. You're going to miss out. If you are in here, welcome. We're really glad that you're here. We'll ask you, if possible, to scooch on in toward the insides of your sections just to make sure that anyone who shows up late has a seat without having to crawl over you. And we will be starting in just a few more minutes.
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire. Standing next to me, there was another in the waters, holding back the sea. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. Dad left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I won't bow to the things of this world. Oh yeah, I know in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding, a power set me free.
All right, well, if you're out in the lobby, you can come on in. We're going to get started here in just a few moments. So if you're at the food table, make your way to a seat, and we'll get started here.
You're not the only one who feels like this, feeling like you lose more than you win, like life is just an endless hill you climb. You try and try, but never arrive. I'm telling you something, this racing, this running, oh, you're working way too hard. And this perfection you're chasing is just energy wasted, 'cause he loves you like you are. So go ahead and live like you're loved. It's okay to act like you've been set free. His love has made you more than enough. So go ahead and be who he made you to be, and live like you're loved. Live like you're loved. Live like you're loved. Live like you're loved. And live like you know you're valuable, like you know the one that holds your soul. 'Cause mercy has called you by your name. Don't be afraid to live in that grace. Oh, I'm telling you something, this God we believe in, yeah, he changed everything.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the celebration of Kim. My name is Steve Taylor, and I have a long history with Crossroads. Actually, at the 1 o'clock, I was here with my wife, Debbie, my daughter, Sarah, my sister, Dawn, and her family, and, of course, my dear father and mother, Roland and Gail Taylor. And some of you remember Roland Taylor was the first senior pastor of Crossroads. And it worked out great because we actually are all here for a family wedding this weekend. My brother Jim and my wife and his wife Terry's son Cody got married to his new bride Cassie in Estes Park yesterday, outdoors. Yes. And Cody seemed like such a nice, normal kid, but so I don't know what happened, but it was very, very cold, but thankfully the reception was indoors, and it was a great and joyous occasion, and I'm so glad I can be with you all this evening. And I realize this is the last one, so I can just talk as long as I want. There's like no limits. If you're wondering how it is that I get the honor of kicking off this celebration of Pastor Kim's extraordinary 38-year tenure here at Crossroads, I will tell you. Because I have actually known Pastor Kim, or Dr. Skattum, as nobody calls him, for 45 years. And I've actually known Cheryl even longer. In fact, one could make the case that Pastor Kim wouldn't be here at Crossroads were it not for an extraordinary face-to-face meeting in the summer of 1982 that was called by me, attended by Kim, and prompted, I believe, by the Holy Spirit. And that Spirit-led meeting took place where so many great beginnings throughout history have happened, in a booth at the Denny's on Federal and West Alameda. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you know, I've been so blessed by Pastor Kim's 38 years of ministry at Crossroads that if that's where it all started, I'd like to go to that Denny's, sit in that booth, and relive that piece of history. And hopefully I won't have to order any food. Well, sadly, the restaurant is no longer there. It's now a gas station, which was coincidentally its nickname while it was still a Denny's. So this is a better crowd, aren't they? They're just faster. I knew that joke would work eventually, but I always wait too long, but you guys were right there, so this is going to be the best one. Okay. You know, now that it's a gas station, I actually petitioned City Hall to put up some kind of historical marker, but you know how slow City Hall can be. So as a temporary marker, I actually visited the gas station's restroom and carved Kim was here in the stall. And you're welcome. So Back in 1982, I was the youth pastor here at Crossroads. The senior pastor, of course, was my father, Roland Taylor, or Reverend Daddy, as I like to call him. I'd grown up in this church. I'd been its youth pastor for 5 years. I loved my job, but I'd just been hired to direct a musical comedy group, and I was getting ready to sign my first recording contract, so it was time for me to move to California. And I wondered who would make for a good replacement, because I really loved what I was doing here, and I wanted to find the right person. So I prayed about it, and I'm not exactly sure how these things worked, but it seemed like the Spirit was prompting me to contact Kim. Now, I first met Kim in high school concert band. I was yes, really? You were there? Okay. Because some of you, I know, have been around a long time, and that's certainly possible. If you were there, first of all, trombone was an instrument I picked up a few years earlier because I was told it was a great way to meet girls. But Kim was the band's first chair drummer, and Cheryl, even though you know she's an accomplished pianist, and I actually knew her as a pianist before I saw her in the drum, group, and I'm thinking, Cheryl, you're actually a musician. Why do you want to be a drummer? But I specifically remember from my third chair vantage point, always looking back at the drum section, and Kim and Cheryl were constantly cutting up and joking, and I mean, you could just see the chemistry all the way from back in the third row of the trombone section. And they just were having so much fun, and I remember getting a little jealous because they were obviously having way more fun than the rest of us in that band. So anyway, as you all know, Kim and Cheryl went on to get married. Kim became a celebrated DJ at KWBI radio station here in Denver. And he also worked at the Ark bookstore, if you remember that Christian bookstore back in the day. And I'd also heard that he also had a part-time role as a youth pastor and choir director at a relatively new church in Denver called the People's Church. So I contacted Kim and asked if we could meet. And as I was thinking back on this, the biggest mystery to me was like, why did we pick Denny's? Because I was thinking, I don't want to be a snob, but I'd been to a few too many Denny's in my life, and that would not have been my pick. And then it turns out that Kim actually likes Denny's. And what is it?
Moon's over my hammy.
Moon's over my hammy, if you have had that. You probably want to, do they still have the Grand Slam breakfast? Yes, they do. Is it still $1.99? No, it's not. It's like $5.60 or something like that. So anyway, we met. And the specifics of the meeting have gotten a little fuzzy for me, so I called Kim yesterday just to confirm the details because I wanted to get everything right. And I was curious how, when we first sat down at the booth, how I introduced the topic. So I asked him, and Kim said, "Oh, I remember exactly what you said. Your opening line was, 'Thanks for meeting with me. I'd like to talk to you about Amway.'" The kids, they don't know what Amway is, but the adults, we remember Amway, right? The original kind of pyramid scheme. And if any of you still sell Amway, I don't mean to insult you in any way. So anyway, we caught up, what's going on with the families, all that stuff. And then I made the pitch about coming to Crossroads. And evidently he asked, "Where is Crossroads?" And I said, "Well, it's at 104th and Huron." And he said, "There's a church at 104th and Huron?" He said, "I know there's a bank on one corner and a Dodge dealership on the other corner, but where's the church?" And I told him, yes, there's a church there, an American Baptist church. And then Kim, having come from a Baptist church that was not American Baptist, said something like, "Oh, aren't they that liberal denomination?" So I told him more about Crossroads, and yes, we were a Bible-believing church, and I told him about my dad and his ministry there. I told him about our youth group, and then he and my dad met a few weeks later, and 38 years later, here we are. So I'm hearing that Kim was retiring. It's caused me to think a lot about legacies. My father, who was here at the 1 o'clock and enjoyed meeting so many of you, and I know a lot of you would have loved to see him and my mom, Gail. They loved being here, but he's 93, so they couldn't hang around all day. But he served the Lord here at Crossroads for 29 years. And without the right leadership to continue the ministry of Crossroads, this church could have become a very different place, or even no place at all. So I just want to tell you, Kim, and you, Cheryl, how much it means to me that you took that legacy and that you have been so faithful and you have been able to expand the ministry and deepen it and all the time keeping Jesus at the center. I don't know if that would have happened. You know, we don't know God's ways, but the fact that it happened is just such a blessing to me. So thank you all so much for your 38 years of ministry here. And I've been able to hang out here for this whole time, but I've got to actually go catch a plane right now. So in closing, I just want to say words I never thought I'd say, but thanks be to God for Denny's.
Thank you. Did you sign my...
Good evening. My name is Dave Runyon, and from 2000 to 2010, I served as a pastor in Arvada, and that's where my path first crossed with Kim. For the last 10 years, I have run a nonprofit that helps pastors become friends and work together in the Denver metro area. And through that time, Kim has become a mentor, a friend, and a partner in this work on a number of levels. And I can safely tell you that no one has done more for the unity of the body in this part of the city than Kim Skattum. And I think a lot of you know that. And Kim, I am so deeply grateful for that. I've come to believe that Kim's a unicorn. And I mean that in a good way. Being a pastor is really, really hard work. The pressure to create new content every single week. It's like having a final exam. And on top of that, you have a staff to lead. You have a congregation and all the needs of the people to respond to. And then you have all these people from the outside who are saying, hey, can I just get an hour of your time? And the truth is that most pastors just barely survive to keep their head above water. They're just trying to keep their institution together. And the idea of investing into other churches, into other leaders, it never even hits their radar, much less their calendar. And this is one of the things that makes Kim so unique. In case you don't know this, Kim is the person who calls the party in Thornton and North Glen. He's the person that gathers all the other leaders and brings them to the table. Number one, just to get to know each other, and then two, to think and dream about how they can serve this community together. Kim, your impact here at Crossroads, and Cheryl, yours as well, has been incredible and profound. And I would like you to know that your impact here in the community has been just as big, if not bigger. The legacy that you are leaving here is going to follow on from you to the next generation and the next. And you have no idea the seeds that you have planted with people like me and with others in this city. One of my favorite Kim stories happened on a pastor's retreat a few years ago. We were going around the circle and just sharing hey, what are you learning about personal growth and leadership this year? And so Kim and another person, another leader, Jeff Johnson, they are a couple of the sages of the group, which is code word for they're the older ones in the room. And everybody's kind of going around the circle sharing, and Kim starts to share about, just learning to take some time and to have good rhythms in his life. And we write down most of what Kim says. He's the E.F. Hutton guy. He doesn't talk a lot, but when he does talk, we all listen. So we're like, oh, that's good, work-life balance. And he's like, and so I've been riding my bike. And we're like, oh, okay, physical activity. We're writing this down. That's really important as well. And then he starts telling us this story about riding his bike and just having eyes to see what's happening around him. And he tells a story that I'm sure many of you have heard about seeing a kid doing these bike tricks and riding by him a number of times and then finally feeling like he's supposed to stop. And if you could have seen this room of pastors, we're all sitting there with our jaws on the floor going, this guy isn't normal. All of us are just trying to survive, and if we actually take a bike ride, it is our time. We're not going to let anyone mess with this time. And Kim just sharing that story, you just reminded us of what it means to be obedient and to have your eyes open. And I personally am grateful for that, and I know everyone in that room was grateful for it as well. Another reason that Kim's a unicorn is because he's one of the rare leaders that the closer you get to him, the better he gets. Yeah, there's an amen for sure. And I wish that was more normal in our culture. But Kim's unique in that way. And I think you can learn a lot about a pastor by listening to what other pastors say about him. And so in preparation for this event, I reached out to a number of pastors, and there are a lot who know Kim well. And it was so interesting to me. They didn't talk about his talents or his gifts, and maybe there's a reason for that. They didn't talk about this incredible church. I'm joking. They talked over and over and over again about who he is as a person. And it just hit me. Like, I hope to be like that. And one of the pastors said this, and I think it sums up what all of them said. And he just simply said this: I hope I can make it the long haul, just like Kim did. And I hope I can become a little bit more like Kim along the way. And Kim, thank you so much. You have led so well. Your legacy, your impact, as I mentioned, will be lived out for several generations down the road. Thank you for who you are and for following God's call on your life. Myself, the people in this room, and thousands of others in our city are so incredibly grateful for you and for you as well, Cheryl. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for your words.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Wow.
All right, we're now going to give Kim a little preview of his own funeral service. So turn your attention to the video screens and check out this slideshow.
I am the youngest kid out of the Skattum crew. So I'm gonna go first. Helping out on the presentation that we put together had made my heart heavy, going through several photos of our childhood into our adult years now. The one word that kept on reoccurring in my head is blessed. Being adopted has blessed me with the greatest dad a girl could ask for. I stressed out as I grew up about not knowing who my biological dad is, and as I've grown up, I've learned several characteristics of what makes up a dad. Someone who challenges you in your faith, is humble, helps you grow as an individual, and someone who loves you in ways you can't fathom. It's also someone who takes you on adventures or dates. Favorite memory, hands down, was definitely the camping trips through the church and our daddy-daughter dances, until eventually I grew out of them. But every time we went, I was reminded of my beauty, happy to spend hours with my dad, enjoying the company of one another. I love you, Dad.
And my name is Luke Skattum, of course. Known my dad as just a pastor just the whole time, and it's awesome just seeing him be in ministry, and that's all I know him as. And to see him go on and pursue his vision with the bike shop, and to see him leading other pastors in the area and doing the internship is really, really awesome to see. And he's been doing it for a while. I know earlier they were. Someone was just talking about how he got all the pastors in the area together, and one time I got to go with him to one of the pastors' breakfasts, and it was great because we got to go up in a helicopter and we got to go see the entire city and see how we're all connected and how it's more than just one church and one church here, how we're an entire community. And he's always lived that and grown that, and we've seen it grow from, the one church up north to all of these three, and he's always had that vision. So I'm really excited to see where he's going with what's coming up, and see him with not being my pastor dad, but just being dad now, and I love it. I love it. I love you, Dad.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and as it might be obvious, I'm one of the middle children. So it's just such an honor to be able to speak today as we all celebrate my dad's retirement. I wanted to take this time to just highlight some of my memories of being a PK, which stands for Pastor's Kid, for those of you who don't know, which is a title that I will always be proud of. I've had the privilege of passing many milestones in the church with my mom and dad, from being dedicated at the North Glen campus by Pastor Roland Taylor, who was here earlier, to being baptized by my dad at the age of 6, getting to be an honorary member of Upward Bound while Dad was the director, and then just simply using the North Glen campus as our playground. Lots of memories of playing laser tag and hide and seek and just running around, and what kid doesn't want a whole church building as their playground? But that's the experience that we got being PKs. So just to fast forward to adulthood, I don't know of too many girls who get to be given away and married by their dad, except Lindsay. She did it too. But it was such a privilege and an honor to be able to have that experience with my dad. So in closing, I've said it, well, now the third time today, but I've said it before many times. But I hope to be just like you when I grow up, Dad. I love you.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, and I am the oldest daughter. And since none of the rest of them said it, I'm also the favorite. First off, I'd like to say thank you to my parents. Thank you for your faithfulness to the Lord, to each other, to all of us kids, and to the church. I know that my dad and our family mean a lot to all of you, but when I think of memories growing up in the church, I can't help but think of all of you and how much you mean to us. From babysitting us, and if you're scarred from that, Ashley can offer counseling. Awana's, his kids, Faith Force Upward Bound, Mexico mission trips, inviting us over for meals, bringing meals to us, and all the loves and prayers. Thank you, Crossroads family, for the lasting memories and friendships.
I'm Paul. I'm the oldest and the favorite. The photo earlier can prove I'm the favorite since I was the first. So I'm going to change mine up just a little bit from what I did last time, but I remember when I was just a little kid, teenager, playing in the gym at the North Glen campus, and they came in and told me the vote had gone through, and my dad was now the pastor of the church. And when you're 11, 12 years old, you don't realize the significance of that and what that would eventually lead to. And now we're sitting here, and I remember when this building was being built, and my dad and I came over here, and he was so excited to show me around, and this is the multi-purpose room, and these are the classrooms, and we're going to be able to serve so many more people now. We're going to be able to help so many more people towards Jesus. And sitting as a teenager after that vote went through to where we are now is just absolutely amazing. And I couldn't be more proud of you. Couldn't be more proud to call you my dad. Love you.
So good evening. My name is Chris Gdowski. I'm honored to serve this community as the superintendent for the Adams 12 5-star schools. I've done that for the last 10 plus years. I also had the good fortune to grow up in Northglenn and live in this community really my entire life. And I also have a pretty bad cold right now, so I apologize for that. So I was unfortunate in that my dad passed away when I was 30 years old. And actually, the final 5 years of his life, he was in a place of significant disability because of heart disease and diabetes. And so I've not had my dad in my life for the last 23 years. I think in part because of that, and in part because of the role I serve in, I've looked often to find role models in my life who can be a few steps further ahead of me in life and model the way for how I should be as I grow up, as one of the kids just said, or one of the speakers said earlier tonight. And Kim's been one of those two role models for me in this community. Dr. Strickland, who's been a physician in the community for a long time, is the other. Tremendous role model for me. What I see in Kim that's made him that, and part of the reason why I now have a note that he wrote to me a couple years ago, posted on the bulletin board in my office, next to a great note from my oldest daughter, who's 27, and a note that my oldest daughter wrote when she was a young kid. Those are the three written things that I look at often to guide me in tough times and to ground me in the work. The reason that he's become that role model for me isn't because of a lot of time spent together. There are times that I don't see Kim for weeks or months, sometimes for many months, but it's the quality of the interaction and what I see in him each time that I interact with him. There are times in these public roles and when you're on the stage that people behave and present in a certain way. And then when you have a chance to interact with them offline in a one-on-one setting or in a social setting or somewhere else, what you see on the stage and what you see in the other setting are often disconnected and not very much the same. That's not true of Kim. When I've seen him speak at services that I've attended, and I've seen him at community events, and then when I've interacted with him one-on-one and in small group settings, I see the same Kim in each and every setting. And what's displayed each and every time is a very humble person who takes seriously and is fully committed to 100% being a community servant. And there's no stroke of ego at all in anything that I've ever seen of Kim. He's all about serving the community. And it may be surprising to hear, sad to hear, but I know in a lot of leadership roles in the community and within the church, this broader institution of the faith community, that's not always the way that it works. There have been some times where I've seen Kim lead this congregation and to step forward and serve our community in ways that I know other faith leaders wouldn't be able or willing to do. We've had some tough tragedies befall us in Adams 12 over the last 10 years. And I'll just talk about a few situations where I've seen Kim serve and lead in the way that inspires me to try to do very much the same in this role. So some of you may know that probably 4 or 5 years ago now, we had a young woman, a freshman in high school at Northglenn High School, who was a member of the basketball team. Very first game of that freshman season, they were playing up in Fort Collins. She elected not to ride the bus back with her team, was driven home by somebody else, and in the course of that travel back home to Northglenn, the car got in an awful wreck and that young woman passed away. and needed a place for that family and those who cared about her in this community to come together and grieve, and to support the family who's left to move forward, and to reach out to God with hope for guidance and comfort and making sense of this terrible tragedy. More recently, probably 3 or 4 years ago, you may be aware that we had a group of students from Legacy High School who were off to California for some football competitions, and then on their way back, after they landed at DIA, the bus driver got misdirected and confused about where she was at, and the next thing you knew, for reasons we don't fully understand, that bus crashed against a concrete pillar, and the driver of that bus, Carrie Chopper, was killed in the accident. A number of coaches were badly injured, and fortunately the students who were on the bus had some minor injuries, but all recovered fairly quickly. In both those situations, both with Mercedes, the young woman who passed away on her trip back from Fort Collins, and then for Carrie Chopper, the woman who passed away driving the bus for us, neither of those folks were anchored to Crossroads as a faith community, and yet Kim was so generous in saying, come to this space. We know there will be many, many who want to be part of grieving that loss, comforting the family, making sense of the loss, reaching out to God for comfort. And he opened up this space to those families and to the broader community to come here and do all that together. Not with hopes that he was going to get more people to be members of the congregation afterward, or that there'd be big checks that were left to support the Crossroads ministry moving forward, just because as a community servant, he felt like it was the right thing to do. And that's what I see from Kim all of the time. If we have a student who's in an accident, and we've had students who may have been in an accident and their bike's destroyed, I'm going to give you a bike. Nothing asked in return. If there's students that need in this community, he's out there finding ways to provide financial support and delegating to people like the principal of Northland High School the authority to say who's most deserving of that support. Again, not so that Crossroads gets recognition. I'm sure the way it goes down is there's not a reference at all to this faith community being the source of those funds, or Kim Skattum being the person who's directed them there. It's not about getting credit or recognition or bringing people into the church to grow the congregation bigger or to increase the contributions any more robustly. It's just all about serving those in need and serving the community in a very authentic way. And I can tell you that it's not always that way in my interactions with some in the faith community. It's like, yeah, we'll support your kids who need to be fed and clothed and need school supplies, but can you cut us a deal in terms of how much it's going to cost to use one of your school facilities for our Sunday worship? And I could talk about lots of other examples of how sometimes it goes down, and I can understand the why behind that, but I've got to respect the way that Pastor Kim's always approached it. It's not a quid pro quo. We're not here to get anything from you. I think he recognizes in the work that we do as schools and the establishment clause in our Constitution that we can't be writing checks back and we can't be steering people to this church, but we desperately have so many families and kids in need, and I can't tell you how good it feels to know that in this church under your leadership, Kim, when there's someone in need, we know that we can reach out and ask for that help, no strings attached. And it's just made a tremendous difference in the lives of so many kids and families and staff members in our community. I'll leave you with a final thought. So this note that I have in my office, I made a photocopy of it because I'm known to lose some things, and this is something I don't want to lose. In the note that he wrote to me a couple years ago, he talked to me about what you do for your work. And it's a little bit hard to read Kim's handwriting. He will not get any penmanship awards. If any of you have ever gotten a handwritten note from him, you'll know that neither Kim nor I, to be honest, are going to get any penmanship awards. What you do for your work is a daily contribution to the good work God does in our world. He cares about the common good and the flourishing of people. I can tell you that that's what I strive to do each day, is to every day make a contribution to the good work God's doing in our world and to help those people so that they can flourish within our community. I fall short many days. Kim, I doubt that you fall short many at all. You really are this servant who makes a daily contribution to the good of our community, and I'm desperately, deeply grateful for that. You're an amazing human being. Thank you for being an important role model in my life. Thank you for the cross of olive wood that you brought back from your Israel trip a couple years ago. It sits on my dresser, and each morning as I'm pulling out socks, I'm reminded about who I'm here to serve and why I'm here to do it. And I just tremendously, deeply respect you. You're an amazing man. Thank you, Kim.
Wow, you blessed me. I appreciate your friendship. Thank you so much. Thanks for your words.
Good evening. My name is Steve Van Ostran. I'm the executive minister of that liberal denomination that Kim talked about earlier, the American Baptist Churches of the Rocky Mountains. And I am in that position a lot because of Kim. Kim was co-chair of the search committee that brought me to this position 12 years ago, and I was excited to be able to work with him. While the American Baptists are considered a mainline denomination, we're really a small denomination and a small family. And for many years before, I'd been hearing about the work that Kim had been doing here in North Lynn and Thornton and North Denver for a number of years. So I was excited to get to know him, and as when we moved here, I was really excited to see some of the work that he has done, particularly in two areas. Number one, you may know that in the last few years, all of Christendom has been troubled with a lot of different divisive issues and things of that sort, and because of that, a lot of denominations and a lot of churches have split. One of the things that Kim has been known for is his wisdom and his patience and his ability to keep people at the table despite the divisive issues. And I really appreciate your leadership in that, Kim, and as you even continue to do that to this day. But even more was when I came into denominational work, the big buzzword in theology and in church work was being missional. Well, you know, a lot of churches had no idea what missional was, but even before that became a buzzword, Kim led this church to be a part of that. Being missional simply means being hands and feet to the community. And you've heard the testimony already today about the way you have led your church to be hands and feet in the community. And I appreciate that as well, especially as you influence others to do that. So it is a great honor to be able to come and to share in this time with these words, but I have the additional privilege of being able to do that in a different language, and that is in one of the love language of giving gifts. And one of the gifts that has been given is a gift from the region. It is a stained glass shepherd. We had that commissioned a few years ago with a Colorado artist for our retiring pastors. We have a number of pastors who have been pastors for 20, 25 or more years, and Kim is one of those. But I am truly honored to give this to you because I see you as the shepherd not only of this congregation, but of the pastors up here and now of the pastors in the region. You are truly a shepherd to us, and so I really, really, really appreciate that. But I also get to represent, yes. I also get to represent you. When you all found out that Kim was retiring, and when you were asked, you were very generous, and you gave, what was it? $12,500 to the More Better Bikes ministry that Kim is transitioning into. Because you see, Kim, I think, is a very biblical guy, and you don't find the word retirement in Scripture. And so he's transitioning from one ministry to three other ministries. And so we appreciate you for that and present you this check. You're welcome. That's it, Mike.
Thank you, Steve, and everyone who so graciously spoke. I'm supposed to say just a couple closing words, so let me just start, before I start my thank yous, and tell you this bike thing, because I know some of you are like, what is all this bike thing about? About 4 years ago, I decided I needed to do something a little bit more tangible. My work as a pastor is spiritual, and I meet a lot of people with a lot of needs, and I sometimes go away thinking, did I do any good? And I believe that on occasion I had. I had a real hard time kind of stepping into the